pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so I realize we don't have a quorum right now. We do have 4 people in the building. We don't have 4 people on stage, so we will not be taking any votes until we get our 4th person. However, we'll go through everything else. So, Lorene, if you could please call the roll.
Linda Avanzato. Don Biscardin.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Cheryl Clarkin. Robert Jones. William Mudge. Kimberly Page.
Here.
Julia Held. Here. Thank you.
Please note for the record that Mr. Mudge was here and stepped out for a minute.
Lorene, could you please go over the calendars?
September 1st, Labor Day, schools and offices closed. September 8th, Policy Subcommittee meeting, 8:30 a.m., Central Administration Building. September 9th, Primary Day, no school for students. September 9th also, School Committee Work Session, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. September 23rd, School Committee Business Meeting, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. There are various open houses at the schools, and the dates are listed in your packets, schedule of open houses. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Presentation recognitions, do we have anything? Dr. Auger?
I guess I would just like to recognize, yesterday we had our convocation for the members of the school department on their first day of work, and I'm pleased to announce that Linda Pacino, a teacher's aide from Quidnesset Elementary School, was named the 2014 Educational Support Professional of the Year, and Judd Sylvia, a special education teacher from Wickford Middle School, was named the Teacher of the Year. It was a beautiful ceremony, and they deserve a lot of credit and honor, and I would imagine that in the next few weeks we're going to set something up for them here at a school committee meeting.
Okay, Bill, we need you here for a quorum. I'm not real sure why you're leaving.
Okay, please let the record reflect that Mr. Mudge did come back to the table, picked up his belongings, and left. So now we don't have a quorum.
All right. So this would be what I would ask those of you who are here. Do we want to go through the reports, let the citizens who have taken the time to come here tonight go ahead and speak, and if there's anything that at least we can make sure that there's a presentation or that we need to go out about, we just cannot take any votes. Would that be fine to everyone?
Citizens' comments, I mean, they can speak.
Sure. Okay, by all means, let them speak, yeah.
Okay. So, yes, Cheryl is not coming, but I have not heard from Bob. I talked to Bob about it. Okay.
I talked to Bob all day via email. He did not.
All right. I'm sorry, Dr. Auger. Did you want to finish up on?
Sure. Yeah, I got distracted there. I just want to make it clear, that we had a very good day. We had a very good day today with the opening of school. I visited most of them myself today, and saw a lot of great things going on. So really happy about that. I'm very pleased about Linda Pacino and Judd Sylvia, and I would imagine that in the next few weeks or so, one of the upcoming meetings, we'll be honoring them at a school committee meeting as well. So good for them, and that's all I have for presentations or recognitions tonight.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to citizens' comments. So we have 3 people who have signed up. So Tanya Carroll, if you'd like to go first, feel free.
Good evening. I'm a little concerned about what just happened here with the school committee. I'm not sure if this is how it usually operates, but as a parent, that is a little disconcerting. But
Welcome to Bill Mudge.
Well, you can make sure your disappointment is directed at the person that left, not the people that are still here.
Okay. Yeah, I hope that doesn't speak for the committee as a whole. But I actually just wanted to circle back on the last committee meeting where we came up and we voiced our opinion. It was my first committee meeting. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a discourse of some kind or some kind of dialogue, and I now understand that's not how it works. I appreciate the comments that were given back to us at the time. The one thing that and this is about the school numbers on the student numbers in the first grade at Hamilton, with one of the teachers being reassigned to another school in the district whose numbers had gone up, and they needed the resources more than Hamilton did. And what I was hoping for at the time was just maybe a response of something like, this other school needed the resources. However, perhaps we can take a look at the numbers, take a look at the finances, and see if it would be possible to actually fund the additional position or not. Something like that, something showing us that you are willing to actually look at the situation. And then, of course, we found out about the budget surplus, which was kind of interesting because we were wondering maybe some of that I think it was ERP software, had made a mistake, and I don't want to begin to understand all the numbers, but it looked like there was money allocated for salaries that possibly could have been used for this extra position. And that's all I really had to say. I did want to say my daughter had a great first day at Hamilton.
Good.
Right.
So thank you. But that was all I had.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Balsarak. I was also here at the last meeting and addressing the same issue. I'd first like to say I appreciate that the school committee has 8 different schools to manage, and there's a lot of responsibilities in all of those schools. And so a few parents from one school about one issue is probably like a drop in the bucket for everything that goes on. But I still think it's an issue that deserves a little more attention. When a young family is considering moving into this town, as we did from Newport, the quality of the public schools is one of the top reasons that we come here. And it's fair to expect high levels of student performance and a quality education. So it's very surprising that we're starting off the school year with 2 first-grade classes at Hamilton at their max size, and some students are already being sent to Stony Lane, and some families are being split up. And at the last meeting, we were told that the budget for the year was in stone, so nobody could do anything about this issue. And then reading this budget surplus letter, seeing the $1.4 million unplanned excess in the budget, I'm bewildered at how you can start the school year off with this situation. From what I understood at the last meeting, there was a 3rd first-grade teacher that was possibly planned for Hamilton, but the extra teacher was needed at Quidnesset because of unexpected higher enrollment numbers. So the school committee seemed to recognize that there was a probable need for another teacher and was planning for it in the budget possibly. But I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure on those comments. It's just from what I understood from what I read. And then also from what I read, it seemed like the ERP software had incorrectly accounted for positions that were moved around within the school department. So in other words, the money was already set aside for teacher salaries. Well, now these funds are freed up for the school committee to spend as they wish, but it seems appropriate that some of those funds could be used for hiring another teacher or staff or just something to alleviate the situation for the first grade at Hamilton. Starting the school year off with the first grade class size is literally overflowing to another school. It seems like poor planning. And it's disconcerting to me that this committee let this happen in a school district with such a good reputation, especially in light of this budget excess, if I understand it properly. And also from what we learned last time about that we get up and speak and then we were able to hear a response. But it seems also that the school committee doesn't see this problem as a problem, and that seems to be what the issue is. So I want to know, how do we engage you and help to solve this problem instead of us just expressing our frustration?
I'm Erin Dorley Foreman, and I have 5 children in 4 schools. I'm one of the parents who has one student going to Stony Lane, and I was just kind of wondering why all of my neighbors and people that I speak to about this tell me that keep calling, keep being the squeaky wheel, and you'll get your way. So I don't know if, what's fair about having 2 siblings at Hamilton and this one little guy in the neighborhood has to go to Stony Lane alone on a bus. So that's all I was just wondering.
Dr. Ajay,
Sure.
if you want to speak to this.
I'd be happy to, and any members of the committee, if you want to chime in. I mentioned a lot about this last time. I'll go over a few points. the planning for the district, I think, is in a very good place. You know, but one of the pieces of planning for a district this size is that you're going to get a lot of movement into a district and out of a district. And, you know, we look at numbers for budgeting as early as the fall the year before. And that's when I'm putting together my budget proposal for the school committee that comes out in January, and it's updated throughout February and March and goes to the town council and comes back. And then we have to kind of wait over the summer and see how do the numbers actually play out. We were using projections at the time. First grade is probably the most volatile in terms of in terms of its predictability, because you have a lot of kids who are at kindergarten, some in the district, many out of the district, and there's no confirmation from those families about, you know, will they be coming back for first grade or not. So there's a lot of guesswork involved. So inevitably it happens, and every year that I've been superintendent, and I know the years before that as well, that there have been situations where in the summer you realize certain numbers spike in some places and they drop off in other places. And we found a situation where the numbers dropped off in the first grade at Hamilton, but they spiked significantly in the third grade at Quidnesset. I'm assigned by the school committee a certain number of staff based on our budgeting, and when we look at assigning those staff for the new year, you know, there is some leeway in terms of transferring one to another, but we're going to go for that route before we're going to go to continually hire more and more people. We've had situations in the past where we've just been one or two people over in a particular grade level at a school, and for years the school committee felt obliged to, okay, that means we're going to add another teacher, you know, with a starting salary of $40,000 plus and a benefits package, so it's $65,000 to cover essentially basically two kids, where the school next door has a lot of available space at the same grade level. And so a few years ago, the school committee, and I was the one who recommended it, made a decision to follow this policy. It's a policy that many other districts follow. Hamilton first grade is not the only grade at elementary that is at its cap. I have about 4 or 5 different grades at various schools that are at their cap. And fortunately, I'm not at a point where, you know, we're at the beginning of the school year, and, you know, if people were to move in after a certain point in the school year, I can do something about it, but that increases, you know, I can pay the teacher more, but it still increases that class size to above the limit that we have set for the district with our contract negotiations. So, you know, it's not perfect and it's not always pleasant, but, you know, the numbers are, in my opinion, within good levels. If I felt that 24 in a classroom for the first grade at Hamilton was unacceptable, I would be the first one to, you know, propose that we do something different about it. But I do feel it is acceptable. I feel it is at the height of acceptability, but within our acceptable range. This has been thought out long before I got here, and I do believe that 24 is an acceptable number. And, you know, part of the reason, you know, this is a big thinking piece for administration and teachers, and it's part of the reason why it's even codified in our teachers' contract. We try to set numbers that we feel under every circumstances, you know, that, okay, this is an acceptable range. So, you know, that's where we are. It is not a matter of squeaky wheels getting grease. You know, I explained last time there are factors that come into this, including the point at which a person would move into the district, you know, and those kinds of things, the distance a person may have to the next available school. I wouldn't want a child being on a bus for an inordinate amount of time. So we look at this very closely and we make our choices, you know, and fortunately, not too, you know, I mean, it's not fortunate for the person who does get affected, but there aren't too many people affected. This year, last time when you came to speak, there were 4 people affected by this. It is now 2, because 2 families have moved out or moved on to something different and have made a space available. We're at 2 right now. So hopefully something can happen and we can make something work. But right now, I don't have that ability. And I don't see that it's a value. And, you know, I'm not proposing to the committee to add another first grade teacher at Hamilton. In fact, there are other places in the district that I could definitely see needs equal to or even more than Hamilton if I were to start saying, okay, I'm going to go with everything I would ever possibly want in terms of staffing. I would start in other places before that because I see other areas that have a need. But in those cases, we're dealing with it as well, and we're going to make it work. If Mrs. Cronkite comes to me after a few weeks and says, you know, we're trying to make this work and it's totally unacceptable, there's all these different problems occurring, I will reevaluate and I'll try to make the best decision I can and bring that forward to the school committee. But I feel like, you know, we're doing the right thing right now. And, you know, I know it's not the answer that you would want to hear from me, but I feel that that's a responsible approach. And it's an approach that a lot of districts take. It's not the first time we've done it in North Kingstown. This is my 4th year as superintendent, and it's the 4th time we've had this issue occur. Not necessarily at Hamilton. Sometimes it's happened at other schools. But it's happened every year since I've been here. I don't know if anybody else would like to add anything.
I'll add something. So this is what I would say. Our meetings are much more formal than our other time. All of us have our email on the website. It's in the newspaper. We all have our telephone on there. And if you're feeling this is a place where you're not getting much of a response, well, you're absolutely right. Because this is our formal meeting time where we have to meet in public. We have to make sure our decisions are here. So it is a little bit awkward when somebody comes up to the microphone to engage with folks. When I first got on the school committee 8 years ago when Larry and I were here, we did frequently have back and forth when people came up to the mic. And what we sometimes found is that was not always very productive. And then when school committee members started to disagree, we would usually have meetings that went to 11, 12 o'clock at night. I remember one that was 1 o'clock at night. And that really just fried us all, and it did not make us for making good decisions. And so at that time, our attorney suggested to us that we don't have to respond during citizens' comments, that can be a time that we listen and then respond later. And I, for one, every person who gives me a call, I call them back. I keep a little log of who calls me and their phone number, so that if something comes up, months later that I need to get back to them, I can. I respond to all my emails that people. I have no problems with meeting people, for coffee. I've met people at Panera Bread who want to talk to me about different things. I've met people, I've gone to PTO meetings. Larry and I have been to CELAC meetings. So it's a sort of thing of, we'll be more than happy to talk to you and converse with you about something outside of the meeting time, because this is a much more formal setting where we really have to get done the business of the school district. So it makes it rather awkward to respond and to converse in the setting that would be the most beneficial to all of us, of just kind of back and forth of why do we do things, how does this come about, and that sort of thing. So what I would say is, feel free to contact us, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you about classroom sizes and all the other things. But here at the school committee meeting is a little bit more of a time that, no, you're right. It does make it such that it's a very formalized setting. So I do appreciate when people come. It certainly gets our attention because I take notes. Lorene puts in our minutes, and so it's always a reminder. It's a nice, it is always a good reminder of concerns that people have, because we know that it's a higher concern when they come to the mic than just when they call us on the phone. But if you want to have the conversation style, that needs to be something that we can continue this.
And if I can be a part of facilitating such a meeting, I would. I mean, I'm more than open to having you come and talk with me in my office, and including any school committee members, as long as I don't create a quorum at that meeting. That's perfectly fine. So, and perhaps there's an idea out there that we haven't been thinking about, and might spark something. But I'm always open to discussing, certainly.
Johnny, do you want to say anything?
No, I just don't want you to feel as though that you're not being heard or listened to, and as Kim stated, we can have more of an open dialogue, whether phone call, email, or arrange a meeting. We can all meet at the superintendent's office and certainly have a much more in-depth discussion, but I certainly don't want you to feel as though nobody's listening, because that's not the case. I have a child in the district that goes to school here as well, and today was his first day, so I'm listening.
Happy Dad, John. Okay. All right. So that's, if there's no other citizens who have anything to say? Cheryl said that she would be able to come if we're willing to wait for her. So we can go ahead and still go through some of the things that.
Maybe wait, maybe.
Right. So, Mary Ann, what are the items that we can take on the agenda with that? I mean, we can probably do the superintendent's report, right?
So we have to, how long?
Cheryl lives about 15
I
minutes
know,
away.
but I'm not inclined to,
Right.
So,
Well, you can't, you're not even adjourning because you don't have, now
oh,
you don't
then we
even, you
don't,
just
then we
leave.
do what we can do, then we leave.
If we could get through the things that we have on here, if Cheryl will be here in 15 minutes, I mean, that's not that's certainly earlier than we were planning on being, so I would like to get through the agenda tonight.
One of the issues that you really should handle tonight, if it's the only one, is personnel, because school started today. So we have teachers on here that haven't been hired.
Yeah, so that should be the reason that we wait. So, why don't, Dr. Ajay, if you could get and give your superintendent's report.
I've already,
You already pretty much give everything yours.
I think we then have to just recess until Mrs. Clockin's coming, or,
She said she's coming, yes. 15 minutes.
She said she's coming. She'll be here in about 15 minutes. So why don't we go ahead and, if we could, it's Connor, correct? Connor, if you could go ahead and turn off the mic, and then we'll come back on when Mrs. Clarkin gets here. Thank you.
All right, I gotta go.
Anywhere. All right, good evening, everyone. We're back online with the August 26, 2014 school committee meeting. Thank you, Mrs. Clerkin, that we now have a quorum. So that brings us to the consent agenda.
Before we get started, I'd like to,
Go ahead, Mr.
I'd just like to have it on record that the level of professionalism exhibited by Bob Jones and Bill Mudge is appalling. These people took an oath and made a commitment to be at every meeting to conduct this, to make sure the school department and school runs as best as it can. And these guys are playing these silly little children's games. It's appalling that they choose to work this way. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter to me if they ever show up again.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, Mrs. Clerkin.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize that anyone was waiting for the meeting to start. I did have a work emergency, and so I had emailed Laureen that I wouldn't be able to make it tonight, not knowing that you wouldn't have a quorum. So had I known that, of course, I would have been here, so I apologize for that.
Well, thank you for coming. We're at the consent agenda. Is there anything to exempt from the consent agenda?
Please have a minute, please. I'm just trying to get my straight. No, I'm good with it.
I think the only thing that probably all would have to say is under E10, I'm not exempting this, Lorraine, don't worry, is that that's Lorraine's resignation under there, and Lorraine has worked for us tirelessly and very, very hard, and had to put up with many, many different situations for the last 3 years, in which we really appreciate all the work, the patience, the way she has gotten us all to come together. And so she will be sorely missed by this committee, by our administration. So I've been,
Thank you.
you'll be hard to replace, Lorraine.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
So do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Carries, okay. So that brings us to unfinished business, and the first thing is of the 2013-2014 school budget, the approval of the fund balance expenditures. Mrs. King, why don't you go ahead and explain as to what they are?
So do not have our FY14 year audited yet, but we do have a surplus, and we are asking for reserving of that surplus, although we're not audited yet. You know, the numbers are pretty solid. We would like to, let me grab my paperwork here. I thought I had it right here, excuse me. We are asking to reserve $1.6 million in fund balance. The large share of it we would like to reserve for upgrades to the North Kingstown High School HVAC system, and that would be $700,000. That would be in addition to the $400,000 that the town has pledged, less what we're spending now on the attic fans. That project is in progress right now. We would like to reserve $400,000 for technology purchases, which helps us conform to the 5-year technology plan that Dr. Auger presented at the end of June. We would like to reserve $200,000 for security upgrades. We still have about $160,000 remaining in our security reserve from last year. We do have the consultant is going to come and provide their report. That's ISI Security. They're going to give us that report at the September 23rd meeting. And the early estimates that they had given Dr. Auger and I when we met with them, though, is that generally in a district of our size, the security upgrades that would be required could be anywhere in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. So this puts us right in the middle of that. We would like to reserve $100,000 for furniture and fixtures throughout the district, and that could be anything from cubbies to rugs to partitions. Our schools are in dire need of a lot of that stuff. The cubbies, there are never enough cubbies. The partitions are very, very old. I can't tell you the last time that any substantial amount of furniture and fixtures were purchased for the schools. We would like to reserve $100,000 for upgrades to the Munis software package, and I do have specific estimates on a lot of these. This would include the student implementing the student activity module, online purchase requisitions, employee self-service module, and possibly automated time and attendance. And also, we would like to reserve $100,000 as a contingency for Davisville Elementary School upgrades. We have $1.2 million, $600,000 from the town and $600,000 from the school department. The early estimates, the cost estimates from our architect are showing that we're in about the range of $1.3 million to $1.5 million. That project is out to bid. You never really know until you know. But we do think that having a reserve for that would, if we need it, we'll have it there. If we don't, we won't. The one thing that I would like to clarify is that unless, and this is what I'm thinking, so this is a yes or no question, unless anything on here requires a contract, so for example, the furniture and fixtures would not require a contract, some of the technology purchases might not require a contract. I just wonder if the school committee still wants us to bring those purchases back after they're reserved, the money's reserved. We would certainly follow all purchasing procedures, but, suppose we are going to purchase $20,000 worth of cubbies or partitions. Do you guys still want that to come back to you for approval with a notation that it's part of a reserve? So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're expecting if you should vote on this tonight.
So, Mary Ann, it's my understanding we'd only have to have it come back if it's for a contract. Am I correct? Or what?
No, I think you need to, just to be on the safe side, we're reserving this tonight, but you don't know exactly what it's being spent on. I believe you have a policy, and I think that even if this is just a purchase, you need to approve the purchase. What's happening tonight is the money's being reserved for these purchases, but the actual purchase really needs to be approved by the school committee.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mrs. King. I think I'm totally comfortable with kind of designating or earmarking the surplus towards these categories. And I think it's good that we plan and have, I just lost it on my computer, I apologize, that we have some plans for this funding. The one thing that I wanted to discuss regarding that was the designation of some fund balance for additional technology purchasing. And I know we've talked about this, but I just wanted to talk about this in public and on the record as well. I know ideally we would like to purchase technology equipment, we would like to lease technology equipment rather than purchase the technology equipment. And I think that's a much better way to go because as we all know, from our own personal technology purchases and use in 2 or 3 years, it's obsolete and you're looking for a place to get rid of it and paying a fee to get rid of it somewhere, to dump it somewhere. So I think it's much more frugal of us to lease, and I think it would behoove the district and keep the district on the cutting edge of technology by leasing rather than purchasing and having outdated equipment and so on and so forth. And I understand from I'm not sure if it's a charter or a policy perspective that leasing does cause some accounting difficulties for the town. So I would like us to look to lease wherever we can lease this technology equipment rather than purchase. Again, I think it's a much more frugal approach, and I think we keep our technology updated rather than purchasing and having outdated stuff. And I think maybe Dr. Roger or Mrs. King can speak better to those two topics that I just touched upon, but I really would like to look more into leasing the equipment than purchasing.
That's right. Mr. Cerisi and I had a conversation about this at our, we were planning the agenda, and we both stated that we would be very supportive of leasing the equipment, just because of the flexibility it gives the district to be able to, when you have the equipment that we find so quickly is outdated, or if something is broken, that we don't have to then have the storage problems and that sort of thing. If you go over in the D building and see all of the computers, it's like the computer where the computers go to die that are over there. It would be nice if we lease these so that then the company that would own them would take it back and almost immediately give us something new. So yes, I would be very supportive of in that situation. I wouldn't want to lease everything, but this, I think, is the prime thing you want to lease. In that owning it is actually seems more of a burden because of the nature of the tech industry.
I do agree, and I'll make sure that I do work with the town. There are some issues with sometimes leasing. There are financial covenants that need to be met with the town because of bonding and whatnot, but I can work more closely with the town to make sure that we can get that done, because I agree as well. The rates are very favorable now. It really gives you a really good refresh. It gives you a good budgeting tool, and like Mr. Cerisi said, you don't have a bunch of junk that either you end up stretching the life out to 10 years when it's really only worth 4, or you've just got stuff laying around everywhere. So I'll make sure I work with Mr. Embry on that, and I'll update the committee.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments on this? Mrs. Clarkin?
So, couple of things. I'm usually not a proponent of designating all of that money that we have in a surplus at the beginning of the year, only because we never know what's going to come down the pike and what expenses we're going to have. So, in looking at this list, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but I did look over it ahead of time. I am totally for the leasing of equipment, the HVAC technology, furnitures, fixtures, munis, things like that. I would question whether setting aside the money for security before the consultant's report or additional money for DMS till we know more, just to give us a little cushion, because those are questionable items. And the other question I have is, if we designate the funds from the surplus and we don't use them or we don't need them, then how do those monies, they just stay in the surplus, or?
Yeah, they would just stay in the fund balance. And what I would repeat is that after this, if this whole request goes through, there will still be $1.2 million in our fund balance.
No, and I know that that's a nice number.
And anything that is not used or, doesn't work out, or if the security upgrades are more or less, it would just stay in fund balance. So I would just not have it reserved. So what would happen right now is, if you saw a fund balance report from me, you would see this estimated surplus. You'd see where I've reserved money, and we'd have a net fund balance. What would happen is I would just take out the money that was reserved. It would increase the fund balance.
Mr. Streisand?
This is just kind of a bird's eye view plan at this point right now, earmarking these funds for these different categories, and I think it's important that we just kind of have a general idea what we would like to apply those funds to, rather than having no plan at all, because I think, without a plan, the money seems to get spent.
I agree with you, Larry.
So I think it's, it's important, and I think, as Dr. Roger and Mrs. King said, if some emergency came up where we couldn't apply, for example, $200,000 or $400,000 to technology plans because something else more pressing or more of a priority came up, then obviously that money would have to be transferred to address whatever that issue.
I guess my question then is, if we reserve the funds now, which I understand, I totally support having a plan, we don't know when those funds will be spent, correct? Like, we're not going to reserve them now, but we're not going to spend it all now, so that if we do have an emergency and we have to dip into fund balance?
Well, the only ones that would take a little bit more time, so DE, Davisville Elementary School, we expect that we will be presenting to you the recommended contractor at the September 23rd meeting. So if we need those funds, those will be spent at that time. Technology, we'll be moving fast on that one. Furniture and fixtures will be moving fast on that. The Munis software upgrades, That would take a little bit more time because I'm not going to purchase those modules until I know I can implement the program, so that's about $100,000 there. The HVAC system at the high school, that's also going to take some time as well. That needs to get out to bid, it needs to get planned. I would not foresee us choosing a contractor for a few months. So it's not going to drag out to the end of the year, but some of the things we would move pretty quickly.
But I would think if we still have $1.2 million in our fund balance, that will give us enough. I mean, because that'll still be what percentage of our
2%.
2%. And so that's what usually you're advised to have the 2% in a fund balance. And so, you know, if we're in an acceptable accounting range of what is needed, you know, I mean, sure, there could always be those things that come up that will be rainy day, but by having 1.2 in our fund balance, we are fiscally keeping ourselves in a very prudent manner that we're not overspending our fund balance, but yet we're getting some of these things that at other times we might be asking the town for. And the town has clearly said to us that they want us to be able to make those purchases, and so this will keep us in a good place. Is there any other questions, any other comments? All right, so I'm looking for a motion and a vote.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, that brings us to the CIP, the existing bond, future bond. Mrs. King, is there anything that you need to update us on?
No, not really. We still, the work on the attic fans at the school is progressing. The fans are in, and they worked yesterday, and they'll be working into next week. The Fishing Cove boiler is going well. The controls work is beginning. Hot water was in the building last Friday. The air conditioning for the robotics classrooms, 142 and 143, that was completed last week. So we're moving along pretty well.
Excellent.
Great, thank you. All right, that brings us to the policy, and this is our annual policy we must approve every year. This is the emergency infectious disease first aid medications. I had our doctor, our district doctor, as well as our head nurse take a look at this policy, and if you took a look at it, you saw some of their suggestions that they made. I did talk to Dr. Kenworthy about the one question that was in the policy about what do we do when a student who is diabetic needs to come to the office. And everyone agreed that they will not be coming alone, that there will always be somebody with them, while the concern was about being an adult, it was agreed that they would always come with at least a student, an adult if possible. So that was, you know, it was more of, I made sure that we had the question out there so that everyone knew as to what needed to be done, because we didn't want anybody who was ill walking in the halls by themselves, especially if they're diabetic. So that had been something that our head nurse was very concerned about, making sure that that was addressed, that nobody was coming down to the office by themselves. So, are there any questions? All right, so do I have a motion to approve a policy JLCE?
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, motion passes. And that, folks, brings us to the end of our agenda.
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, I just want to clarify what happened so that if we were to get an Open Meeting Act via a complaint, everybody knows on the record what we did. We originally had a quorum. Mr. Mudge was here. You attempted to open the meeting. Mr. Mudge left. At that point, you did some discussion items so that it wouldn't be rude to the people sitting in the audience who had come to make comments, and you allowed non-voting items to be talked about. But there were no votes taken, no action, no votes. Mrs. Clocken was running a little late. When she arrived, you basically reopened, we turned the cameras back on, we reopened the meeting, and then we proceeded with all of the voting action items at that point. And that's just, I want that on the record so that it's clear to everyone what happened, what was done, that there were absolutely no action taken before we had a quorum in the event that we should get a complaint.
All right, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, we are adjourned.
Because you started the discussion with the expectation that you were second.